Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer. Issue 23. Part 1. Alright, so it's been a fair while since I've done a video, and now it's time to come back with issue 23. We've got spellbook, dice, new level up, new adventure, arc and more. So let's dig right in. So to start with, the customary dice. I haven't looked at any of these in a while. But here we get a nice set of black and green. Yeah, these are alright. I like the look of these. They can stay in the collection. Not blue, as may be pointed out. Yeah, they'll do for now. And we'll take a bit of a look at this later. But let's get into the magazine. So as you can see, it's got new cover art because we're heading into the third adventure arc. Although, sorry, I didn't notice before on the actual artwork, it's all the actual characters. So like grabbing from issue 22, that's our Dragonborn and our Elf and our Halfling. And there, and look, our Rogue's now injured. That's our Dwarf. And then our Forest Gnome, our Dragonborn again. All I'm saying is the actual art features the actual characters. Something I might have to go back and check in the trial issue too. Anyway, so we're going to get into this. Third level, Rogues, Shape Changes, and Harpers. And Orcs. So this issue, we're going to get to the third level, but only for the basic 4 classes. Not basic 4, the original 4 guys we started with. We'll cover the newer classes in a future issue, probably next issue. And we're going to learn about archetypes. I've heard about them briefly in some back issues before. Plus we've got our shape changes and the Harpers. So let's dig in. The Rogues and the Fighters get more features than the Wizard and Cleric. Or at least they get 2 pages worth anyway. But we'll start with the Rogue. So now at third level, our Rogue's going to choose their Roguish archetype. There's going to be 4 over the page, and the rest are going to be covered in part 2, which is this issue anyway, so it's not too far away. And it says, top tip, classes can specialise in subclasses, which are what these Roguish archetypes are, normally at third level. So everyone's getting like a little subclass. Previously, we talked about our fighters could be like Cavaliers or something like that. Maybe Champions, I don't know. We'll find out anyway. But why am I talking about that? It's Rogues. So what do we get for Rogues? I'm already quite excited reading through these, actually. This is a lot of new stuff for me. But so you can become an arcane trickster. He's got a couple of little magical spells he can do, like Mage Hand or top tip. You can also get Find Familiar to get a useful animal sidekick. And his Mage Hand can be invisible for picking locks and stealing things out of sight. Or you could be Assassin. They've got an Assassinate feature, so they're going to get critical hits on surprise creatures and get advantage over characters who haven't taken a turn. You could be Inquisitive. They got a couple of features like Ear for Deceit or Insightful Fighting, but they can get bonuses for their checks and against fighting some creatures if they can pass their checks. Or the Mastermind, he's got a Master of Tactics, so he can help characters at distance, as well as he's got proficiency in some extra kits. And you also get your standard extra hit points, and your sneak attack goes up by 2d6 damage. But if none of those sound good to you, what about going to part 2? 5 more archetypes to choose from. So you could be the Phantom archetype, a bit necromantic sort of thing. You get Whispers of the Dead, where you can kind of learn skills from ghostly presences. Doesn't really explain how it works, because it says you learn them at a short rest. I'm not sure, does that mean you learn it permanently, or is it temporary? Or can you only learn them if there's a ghostly presence there who knows it? Otherwise, you not just run around having infinite short rests until you know how to use every tool that ever existed. Who knows? Anyway, you could also be a scout. They're sort of like a wilderness sort of guy. They got a skirmisher feature so they can move in and out of combat easier. Or just, well, it depends on enemies. And some extra bonuses for nature and survival. You got the Soul Knife guy here, who's got like a psychic blade there, so he can do extra damage and get psionic energy to help with skill checks and do telepathic stuff. Could be a fancy swashbuckler as well. That's the classic rogue trope, isn't it? And they get like lots of fancy footwork, so they get some bonuses for that. And rakish audacity, so they get initiative bonus equal to charisma. They can also sneak attack foes within 5 feet when there are no other creatures. At the top tip, it means you don't have to use your cunning action to disengage. So you can use it to do other stuff, I guess. And finally, the Thief, which is the classic option. That's the guy I was brought up on, just a thief. And it's what we're going to get for our pre-generated character, Krantor. But they get fast hands, so they can use their cunning action bonus action to do other stuff. And they can also climb at any extra movement cost. Finally, one optional feature as well. I'm not sure where it came from, but you can get the steady aim feature for the rogue. If you haven't moved, you can gain advantage on your attack roll, but it costs you all your speed for that round. Obviously, don't move, take aim, and attack. Enough about rogues then. Let's move on to wizards at 3rd level. And actually I realise why they only get 1 page, because it's quite simple. They just gain more spells. Additionally, they get 3 spell slots, so we get 1 first and 2 second. Which is why we've got the 2nd level spells now, because Merovich is going to gain some. Gain 2. And there's loads to choose from as well, so Overleaf we're just going to get some examples. And there's a little top tip here. It's not just your level up spells, you can also copy spells, but it costs you 50 gold pieces each time. So some amazing 2nd level spells here. Obviously, Hold Person you can use to paralyse the target within 60 feet, but even if they're attacked, it still doesn't wear out. That's very useful. Levitate can be used on you, your allies, even your enemies. Take people out of combat, put them into combat, protect your archer. They do get a saving throw though if they don't want to be moved, or unwillingly get moved. You get Mirror Image, which is defensive. You create 3 more copies of yourself, and as long as they're still alive, it's harder to hit you, although they can be taken out 1 by 1. Misty Step lets you teleport. Scorching Ray, 3 rays of fire to attack. And finally Suggestion, which lets you suggest targets do something, which they may do if it seems reasonable, although they can resist. It talks a bit about concentration, and also you get your hit points again. So the wizard features smaller, although we do have the book later. But that may also come into effect when we look at the cleric, which is probably why they've also only got 1 page. So with the clerics, it does say you've already chosen your domains, so all you're going to do is make your domains better. You don't get more features, you just get more spells, like your wizards, or spell slots, 2nd levels, and you get some domain specific stuff. So is it just going to show us the life or everything? It does say the spell books here. So the cleric spells then, going through some heavenly 2nd level spells. We've got Aid Person again, so not Aid Person, sorry, we've got Aid, which lets you buff up to 3 creatures in your party. Then you've got Hold Person again, which is, you know, the same as what the wizard had. In your top tip here, unlike the sleep spell, the whole person's paralysed, so they won't recover even when hit. Locate Object, useful for finding specific items in a dungeon. The Prayer of Healing, can't be cast in combat because it's got casting time of 10 minutes. I mean, technically you probably could, but it'd be quite dangerous for you. And it would probably take the entire combat. But it heals up to 6 creatures. And then Silence, which lets you create a sphere of silence. It does make creatures immune to thunder damage, which is interesting. So I guess thunder damage is associated with noise. But it stops spellcasters from casting spells. Nice. And then moving down, obviously because Rezagar is a life domain, we're just going to look at the 2nd level life domain spells. But obviously, I imagine all the domains for clerics have got 2nd level spells. But Lesser Restoration lets us heal some status conditions. And Spiritual Weapon lets you summon a floating spectral weapon. I've seen this somewhere, and I can't think where now. I can't remember. I feel like it was an enemy in a previous encounter, maybe. But I don't know. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go on to the fighters. And again, the fighters, like the rogues, are going to have 9 different archetypes they can choose from, which is why we're going to get 2 parts. So we'll look at the first 4 in part 1. Okay, so we get Arcane Archers, who basically, including Irina, the pre-generate character, they're trained in Elite Elven School of Archery, which basically means they can imbue their arrows with magical powers. They get some other skills, and they can learn some cantrips, but basically they get a couple of arcane shots. There's a variety of options, but 2 listed here in Enfeebling Arrows, which wound necrotic damage and can cause them to be weaker, and Bursting Arrows, which explode. But it does say you can choose to trigger them after seeing if it hits or not, so you don't just waste them. I feel like you go, hit, yeah, I'll use it this time, which is quite nice. Not like when you choose to shoot your 1 magic arrow and miss and it's just wasted, how it used to be. And you use Intelligence bonus, so you want to be a smart fighter if you're taking this class. You've got Battle Masters. They get a load of combat maneuvers and they get superiority dice, which they roll to use them. But it does say it's going to talk more about combat maneuvers later. Champions, they just get improved criticals, so they can also critical at a 19. Useful. And then Cavaliers, and these are just obviously mounted warriors, so they get a lot of bonuses for fighting in combat on a mount. And they get Unwavering Mark as well, so they can give creatures disadvantage if they attack them. Plus, don't forget our hit points bonus. And it does say top tip, the Cavalier's got a limited number of uses of his Unwavering Mark. Don't fancy any of those though, let's go to page 2 and check out the next 5. And this here, we get a more magical looking page. We've got Eldritch Knight, who, like with the rogue, you get a spell casting character. So again, you want good intelligence for casting spells, and you'll learn a couple of spells and cantrips, although you've got a set list for them. And you get your bonded weapons to them, so you can't be disarmed. Or you could have Psi Warriors, very similar to our Psionic Rogue. They gain Psionic dice, but they can use them for protective fields, telekinetic movement, Psionic strikes. You could have a purple dragon knight. I don't know if you get knights of other dragon colours. This just gives me images of Cecil from Final Fantasy IV. But apparently they're an elite military order from the nation of Cormit, and they get the rallying cry feature. So when they use their second wind, they can actually use it on extra allies in the area as well, not just themselves. We get the rune knights. These guys can cast runes into equipment to give them bonuses. And they've got a lot of giant stuff, so they learn the giant language, and they can might the giants, which gives them a lot of bonuses, like an increased size and advantage and strength checks. And finally, the classic samurai. They've got the fighting spirit feature, so they get offensive and defensive capability boosts, temporary hit points, advantages and weapon attacks, and they can use it a couple of times between rests, as well as gaining additional skill, proficiency or language. And I'm sure if all the campaigns, the samurais come from somewhere exotic, so they have some exotic language. And then we would move on to shape changes, but this is only part one. This is going to be a two-part video. Mainly because I've had a lot to take in these last few pages, as well as I've been out of it for a while. So I'm just doing this for now so I can get it all in my head, and then I'll come back to this in a bit. I've also got a couple of deliveries, so I'll probably just have a quick look at one of them first, and then come back and finish off the rest of the issue. And I mean, I know when I do my deep dive episodes later, this one's going to take a long time. But anyway, yeah, so that's most of the third level stuff in brief. We're going to have a look at some shape changes, harpers, and more stuff later. So I hope to see you in part 2. Catch you then.